Tim, thank you so much for participating in this interview. I'd like to ask you, what actually inspired you to become an artist?
Many things inspired me to become an artist. It was never about one thing, but I kind of grew up in a creative family that, great at playing games, great at looking at art, buying art. So I was always surrounded by, I think, really interesting examples of creative ideas or pursuits. So that had an amazing impact or influence on me. It kind of became a natural kind of focus, and then I visited a lot of art museums, and my parents and my grandparents always took me to, so that compounded that. So things just eventually started to pick up, and you found a more appreciation for certain things, and that was really actually.
What was your educational background?
Crazy.
Okay.
Everything, everywhere, all over the place. It was never really a planned out or methodical trajectory in any ways. I went everywhere, did everything. 3 degrees total. Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Fine Arts, and Masters of Architecture. So, and I went to school in 3 different countries. 3 different states, so.
Tell me about it.
It's a lot.
Where did you originate? Which state were you from?
Well, I'm from Chicago. That's where I was born and raised, and then the surrounding areas, and then out from there. So almost as a kid, we kind of moved around a lot, and I'm sure that's affected my life too. But it also made me adapt and assimilate quite easily. It almost became a natural thing to do that. Also maybe a sense of restlessness gets equated with that, but you have the opportunity to see so many different things from so many different angles and points of views that that influences your work as well. But yeah, I grew up in the Midwest.
Do you consider yourself a painter?
I consider myself an artist. If I consider myself a painter, then that would limit me to being creative in other things. So it's really an artist, and that's really a creative pursuit process. So that process gets applied to anything I may decide to do. I've done photography, I've done installation art. I'm now working on literally art sculptures for the first time, which is interesting and a challenge, and so I'm not at once any one of those things, but I think more to the point, I'm always all of those things,
Mm-hmm.
and they influence what I do. I don't think I could be good at any one thing if that's all I did.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can draw upon other experiences and backgrounds, and that definitely helps influence and brings out a lot of depth to what I do, and Wiley agrees with that.
That was definitely an agreement.
Sit.
He is very comfortable right there with his ball. There's Wiley. They're not.
But that's kind of where we were.
Okay. Well, let's move on from
I
this.
want to keep the conversation going. So.
What kind of conversation are you having with this particular piece on the wall right behind you?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's an answer because I'm working on them, so they're not done.
This is work in progress?
Yeah, these are works in progress for my solo show at Gallery 825. But all the pieces are really, they are about conversations. They're about combining other things and seeing what happens. Some of those things work, some of those things don't work. And sometimes the things that don't work are just as interesting as the things, probably even more interesting than the things that do work. And you just try to find, in reference to the conversation idea, you try to find a happy medium for all these things to exist, that works. So they're constantly just searching for that thing that sparks an interesting, conversation, or dialogue, really. So you're just always looking, always searching. It's process. Everything is process. But every body of work, like this is one body of work, I have other bodies of work, and I work in series, is a whole different process. You know, how this page gets made as opposed to this one over here or this one over here, they're all made differently. You know, it's never the same. You start from a 0 point and you wind up figuring it out as you go, changing and making decisions based on other pieces that you try to incorporate into it. So it's literally always different. I mean, what is consistent is that it's a process, and all my work is process driven, you know. It's also the consistent thing about them is that there's just layers and layers and layers and layers, hundreds of layers of pieces of paper that come into being, you know. And at some point there's an interesting dialogue. These are different, but these are about texts, you know. I mean, the name of the show is Palimpsest, so it's, you know, crossing out words, making way for new words, you know.
What's the name of this show again?
Palimpsest.
Palimpsest?
Yeah.
And where's it going to be opening?
At Gallery 825.
And what time frame?
October 15th through November 12th, 2011.
Awesome.
So.
Now, you also talked to me about Blythe projects. Do you have something coming up for that?
Yeah, well, my fall this year is very, very busy, to say the least, you know. But yes, I have, I'm now represented by Blythe Projects in Culver City, and Blythe Projects, I will have their main solo show in September, which opens September 10th through November 22nd. And the two shows, Blythe Projects being first, 825 being second, actually overlap for a little over a week or so. So they have that going on. So it's busy in the fall, which is good, because LA is going to be spectacular this fall.
It is.
For the arts, so everyone's excited about it.
How much does Los Angeles influence your work, like your environment? How much does your environment get into your collages?
Yeah, that's a great question. I like that, because not many people, I like the question because you see something that could be true, and I think it is. You know, I've grown to be a big fan of. The question about Los Angeles is a good one. Not many people ask it or even see it in the work, but I have recognized in the last few years that I think you can equate it as having a little bit more to do with Los Angeles than I would otherwise be comfortable admitting. You know, so I mean, coming from the Midwest, I was not a fan of Los Angeles. I loved what was here. I loved the experiences, but I've grown to be a big fan. I've been here for a while now, but it was only till recently that I realized what exists here in Los Angeles, the arts, you know, in media, of course, you know, that's what's in my work, advertising, movies, all these things. And in some ways, LA is a great big collage. It's a collage of ideas, of experiences, of people, of communities, of arts. I mean, everything. Everything in culture, counterculture, you know, popular culture is all here at the same time, trying to function as, you know, as a city or as an idea of a city, you know. But it's always an experiment. It's always changing, and I think my work is like that. And I'm actually just thinking of that now, almost out loud. But the idea of all of these influences that we're surrounded by, as in a media-saturated world, is that how do you make sense of it, and how do you combine it to kind of exist in a harmonious way? And I think my collage is kind of like that in some way. That's one answer, and maybe 20 other I can give you about why these collages are what.